Hey everyone, Tracie here. Today's topic is from Nick B, and it is about levels of consciousness. And for this, I'm going to need a little help from my friends. My first friend is Dr. David Hawkins. He passed away in 2012, but he was a famous spiritual teacher as well as a psychiatrist. And he came up with this map of consciousness, which I'll put up for you to see. And the map of consciousness goes from our understanding of Source or God to our emotion. And they're negative, and they spiral in a negative direction until they become positive. Now, that doesn't mean we're always experiencing positive or negative. They're intermingled. And one level could be your predominant. It's your operating, where you're operating from is either predominantly negative or positive. So the negative attractor fields would be shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride, and then it moves to courage, and it begins to spiral in the opposite direction to be positive. And then it moves to neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, and all the way to enlightenment. Enlightenment in the Buddhist philosophy is the merging of the self with Source, although they don't really use the word God. But so Christianity would be about salvation, and that would be Jesus was trying to teach people and bring them to the level of unconditional love, which is the level of reverence, awe, and it surpasses the level of understanding. My little Yorkie puppy, Tazie, wants to say hi. She's going on 4 months, and we call her Tazie because she's like the Tasmanian devil. The way that Hawkins describes the map of consciousness is also how other people, teachers, masters speak about the chakras. And they're framed with a color that you can't move into the heart chakra until something moves through the root chakra, which is your grounding or your survival, or you'll always choose to react in something that logically you don't think is going to cost your life, but it will feel that way. So the belief will be you can't handle rejection, because rejection is the belief, the superficial belief that you think that you're dealing with, but down at the bottom layer is really that you will die, because it feels like when we lose love and we lose joy, that it's the biggest loss. And in a sense it is. Dr. Hawkins there's a bunch of YouTube videos if you're interested in hearing him. There's a lot of free information out there. He also has many, many books out there. I've read all his books multiple times, and I'll put a picture of the books so you can kind of see them. The second friend that's going to help me with levels of consciousness is Eckhart Tolle. And Eckhart Tolle wrote 2 books, The Power of Now and The New Earth. And he talks about being present, bringing your attention and your focus into what you're doing. And he also speaks about the pain body. The pain body is our reaction. It's an automatic reaction that we don't really have a choice. We get triggered, and then we have a reaction. But the more that we're present, the more we become aware of the pain body instead of merging with the pain body. We become the pain. And so I really enjoy his work, and he also has many videos on YouTube, so you can get free videos, and I will put a picture of his books as well. So one of the books that Hawkins did is called Transcending the Levels of Consciousness. And in this book, he goes through all of the levels, and we have an attraction and an aversion. You know, there's things that we don't want to feel. So let me just go ahead and read a little part of this book to see if you might be interested. It kind of gives us an idea of the work that we have to do, which is really mind stuff. This is on page, let me see, I can't read this, 189 of Transcending the Levels of Consciousness. With maturity, there is the development of a sense of humor that replaces hostile attacks and outbursts. The peace and quiet that seem boring to lower levels of consciousness are now preferred, as are periods of calm during which to think and contemplate. Reflection now becomes more important than emotionalized reactivity. Desires are less demanding, and the quality of patience replaces dryness and intolerance for delay of gratification. So we can't begin to really do work until we can at least be honest with ourselves. And according to him, most of the world isn't even at that place. Although in the United States, that's not true. Most people calibrate or are existing or attracting to themselves at the level of reason. The problem with reason is we put so much trust in the mind. We think that we're believing in God, but we're trusting in our own thinking. And so the paradigm of love, peace, and joy exists above the mind or beyond the mind or transcended the mind. I'm also a big fan of Abraham Hicks, and I've seen Esther Hicks 3 times and probably will go see her again in February. My third friend and teacher and mentor is Byron Katie. And Byron Katie wrote several books. One of them is called Loving What Is. And she speaks about reality and the difference between reality and our interpretation of reality with a process called the work. And there's 4 questions. Is it true? Can you absolutely know it's true? How do you react when you believe that thought? And then the turnaround. The turnaround gives us the insights of what we're expecting other people to do, and yet we're holding, that we're not able to do that. So it's a projection. I will also put a link to the books Mirror, Mirror, and Crystal Clear if you're interested in getting those from Amazon. The first book that Nick and Tanya and myself wrote, called Mirror, Mirror, is about empowerment, about what's the difference between knowledge versus wisdom and taking things personally. And the second book is called Crystal Clear, and that is around our misunderstandings about God, because people will preach and teach according to their interpretations of God, and a lot of it is, incorrect. It's spoken from whatever level of consciousness that a person is vibrating at, because that's how they will understand source. And, we can't help it. As humans, you can only be whatever level of consciousness you are at the time until you change and move levels. And to know how to do that, Hawkins is a great teacher. And because I had such a desire to know God, I studied the Bible for over 25 years. And so Jesus is one of my favorite teachers. The understanding of what he actually said, not other people's interpretation of what Jesus said, but getting to the understanding of what Jesus was actually teaching and what he meant by being Christ-like, and understanding what he actually said took a long time. I mean, so many times I would throw my Bible across the floor because it seemed like what I was interpreting as loving was actually not loving. But it's really, I actually blamed God for my suffering. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to know God. I wanted to know about this being who was displeased with us and wanted to send us to hell. And ultimately I found that what really creates the pain body is not God, but the ego. And if you want to learn about the ego, Hawkins is very good at teaching the constructs of the mind. I can't tell you how amazing it is, because if you don't know the tricks that the mind does, we fall for them. We're gullible, and we will project it out to the world, and we'll never really know our true power, or we'll never really connect with source. Having a concept about something isn't a connection. It's just a concept. We want the experience of peace, the experience of love, the experience of joy. We want the God source energy to actually be flowing in our life. The depth of consciousness is studied in universities and it's very lengthy. But if I were to summarize a very in-depth study, I would say that all of our meanings and understandings about life and about circumstances and situations go on in consciousness. The awareness of what's going on in consciousness is the God, the source. So some people say consciousness or the pure consciousness is source energy at its purest without definition. It's just pure energy. And I like to interchange the words that we are the awareness of consciousness and everything that goes, like the blackboard. Awareness is the blackboard, and everything that's written on the blackboard is consciousness. And in order to change your level of consciousness, you have to make choices that are more supportive of life, following certain principles. And when we do that, when we give up the ego, we get more God. So it's more of an undoing. To jump levels of consciousness doesn't mean that you're better than anybody. I like to say, or make this clear, that we can be better at, but we can never be better than. You know, you can be better at singing and better at carpentry, but you can never be better than another being. And so there's that misunderstanding. We are all equally valuable, no matter how horrific somebody is. They will suffer the consequences of that, but as far as value, we are equally valuable, even though people are better at certain things. So we don't have to lose our self-esteem if we don't have to be the best or as good, you know, we can use our talents, whatever they are. And consciousness is a learning process. Anyway, that's the simplest understanding. It's very complicated until it gets simple. But even when I share that with people, they're like, what are you talking about? That we are the awareness of the body. There has to exist something greater than the mind in order to know the mind. We are the seer of all things. And that is, the step back from the pain body. It's giving us the pause. It's giving us not to actually see the mind. If you were the mind, you couldn't see it. So something greater has to exist. And so those levels of consciousness, they can be talked about, but I'm in agreement with the other teachers that you can only point to it. It has to be experienced or realized within yourself. Anyway, this was a hard topic, but challenging and a good topic. Thank you, Nick, and peace to you.